Hi, everybody.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. My name is Preston Dennett, and I'm joined by Dolly Safran. Say hi, Dolly.
Hello.
As you know, I'm an author, researcher. Dolly is a contactee, fully conscious UFO contactee. And you are now joining us on our podcast, The Light Gate. This is episode 3. We are all about exploring UFOs, paranormal, and all the wonderful things that are out there in this infinite universe. We're streaming on several platforms: Roku, Rumble, YouTube, Facebook. We're streaming live on the United Public Radio Network in the beautiful city of New Orleans on 2 stations, actually, 107.7 FM and 105.3, also the UFO Paranormal Radio Network. So yeah, we're out there on a number of platforms. I'm really excited that all of you are joining us tonight because we have a super exciting guest. He's someone I've known for years. He's really one of a handful of researchers I truly respect. There's a lot of researchers out there, and this guy's really on the top of my list. He's, like me, really into this stuff, digs deep, really into the facts only of a case, and his name is Michael Schratt. You may have heard of him before. He's pretty well known in this field. He's a private pilot, a military aerospace historian, longtime UFO researcher, lecturer, sought-after presenter at UFO conferences, a very accomplished draftsman. He's an incredible artist. He's an expert on classified black projects, and especially interesting to me, UFO crash retrievals. We're going to be talking a lot about that tonight. The government UFO cover-up, and really all things UFOs. I've met him face-to-face several times. We've shared notes and corresponded for a long time. He is the author of a very well-received book. It's called Dark Files, A Pictorial History of Lost, Forgotten, and Obscure UFO Encounters. And yeah, frequent guest on many radio shows and podcasts, including Coast to Coast. And in fact, he will be featured at the Contact in the Desert convention in June of this year. So yeah, I'm super excited to talk to him. What about you, Dolly?
I'm very excited. This is really awesome. Yes.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. So
Right.
let's waste no more time, and let's just bring in Michael so we can get started.
Hi, Preston. Hi, Dolly.
Hi.
Hi, Michael. Yeah, as I said, I really respect you as a UFO researcher. There's so many people out there who are just pushing forth wild claims, wild stories with really no confirmation. And I just love how you really take the effort to dig deep into these various cases. And I did see your presentation that you put forth on UFO crash retrievals. It blew me away. One of the best I've ever seen. So I'm hoping we can dig into that.
Well,
Yeah.
I want to give you credit, Preston, for doing what you do, because I've never seen an author crank out as many publications as you have. Nobody does that. Only you do. Only you do.
Yeah, well, I love it, so that makes it easy. I'm obsessed. What can I
He is
say?
obsessed. He works a lot on it.
Well, you know, Michael, once you get pulled into this field, that's
right.
it. You're a member.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is actually how I kind of want to start, because I've always been curious. I don't think I've ever asked you this, is what drew you into this field? Were you a skeptic? I mean, I know you've been doing it a long time.
I guess the easiest way to answer that is aviation has been a part of my life from day one, from the very beginning. My dad used to take me to a place called Victory Air Museum in Mundelein, Illinois. It's long since gone now. But they had these old warbirds parked out on this grass field with cracked windshields and opaque glass and shattered windows, and it had paint that was chipped off and faded, and it just, these old warbirds, P-51s, they had some German planes there, they had a PBY Catalina there, and it just had this ghostly, otherworldly feel to it. That was my introduction to aircraft, generally speaking. This is really at an early age. And then my dad would take me to the EAA Oshkosh Air Show, and this is 27 years in a row. that kind of spurred my interest in aviation. So you can see some of my models behind me here. I'm hardcore aerospace all the way.
Wow.
And, and what things started just leading from there. I started interviewing test pilots and engineers. Mark McCandlish was a big influence in my life. I want to give credit to him. He pieced a lot of this story together too. But, more in the longs of what we're talking about today. And it looks like I've got to plug in my power here. Stand by for 1 second. Lose everything here. Okay.
Look at all those models. Yeah, my brother Steve.
I don't want to lose this. All right, so looks like we're good here. Okay, so anyway, back to Oshkosh. Literally 27 times in a row, went there, very familiar with it. Want to give credit to Mark McCandlish. Also want to give credit to our late friend Leonard Stringfield, and he's the basis of our discussion this evening. Really, his work is incredible. I do think it deserves more credit. In a nutshell, Leonard really was a genius. He memorized the entire Webster dictionary. This is the kind of man that you want on your team. He worked in Cincinnati at a chemical factory. He died in '94 timeframe. But what I want to mention is he had a sighting of a Foo Fighter in World War II in a twin-engine aircraft. And they thought they were going down because they lost the engines. When this thing pulled away, the engine started up again. And that was his first introduction to this whole concept of UFOs, Foo Fighters, eventually leading to the crash retrievals. He eventually published 2 books. And in the late 60s, early 70s timeframe, he started getting these stories from all of these first-hand military witnesses, pilots, engineers, air traffic controllers, astronauts, cosmonauts, people who were on crash retrieval teams, people who held the debris, the craft, the bodies, people who saw disc-shaped craft being loaded onto 18-wheeler tractor-trailer lowboys and being shipped to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Those are the caliber of witnesses that Leonard had put together. So to make a long story short, it was July 1978 where Leonard gave a lecture at the International MUFON Symposium in Dayton, Ohio, the same location as Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. I always thought that was interesting. So Leonard gets up in front of this large audience. This is 1978 at the MUFON Symposium. And he lays out 12 crash retrieval cases in a paper he called Retrievals of the Third Kind. And it was a revolution because people back in 1978, they had never heard this concept before. He actually coined the term UFO crash retrieval. He was the first one to coin that term. And people they were astounded. They had never even conceived that this concept could be real, that we actually have bodies and we've put them into storage. We've used liquid nitrogen cooling to chill down the bodies to preserve them. I mean, this is just an unbelievable claim. And there was some pushback. There were absolutely some pushback there because the deal that Leonard made with his sources is that he would preserve an important part of our national history by maintaining the story, but his witnesses, their identities had to remain anonymous to protect them, because it's understandable. These people were on the crash retrieval teams. They had jobs, they had pensions, they had families, so their names could not be released. And that was the point of contention at the MUFON Symposium, because Leonard really didn't have a solid way to back this up because he wouldn't release the names. So there were a lot of people that were upset that these witnesses could not be named. And I understand it. I get the frustration. However, at least we have the story. At least we have the story. So what I've been doing the last 2 years is I've been working with my good friend Rudy. I've been working with my good friend Joel, and also Joe Wraith is my other friend that I've been working with. And we've been kind of having this crusade to illustrate these cases and make these cases come alive. And so that's what I've been doing the last 2 years. Yeah,
I saw some of the illustrations. And it's funny, I know about Leonard Stringfield and his pioneering work. I truly respect him. He wrote Situation Red, the UFO Siege. Great book. When I found out about his crash retrieval, he called them status reports.
Correct.
They would come out one every year or two. I actually wrote to him because I didn't have the last one. And I couldn't
Yeah.
believe he wrote me back, sent me the status report, signed it.
Good.
I was just a young kid, newly into this field.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and I do know that. I believe he received a death threat at one point or a threat of some kind.
It got a little heavy there. Now, after the presentation, as he was giving his presentation, when he was done, he asked the audience, if you or someone you know has any firsthand knowledge of UFO crash retrievals. I'm talking about military people who held the bodies, who held the debris, who loaded the craft on trailers. Call me. I want to get in touch with you. So then he went on a vacation with his wife, Dell, for 2 weeks. When he came back to the post office, he went to his P.O. box and he opened up the little door and he looked inside and there was nothing there. There was nothing there. And he thought, this is a waste. I spent all this time. I got no feedback. He looked again and there was a small little card. He turned it over and it said, "See Postmaster." So he walked over to the postmaster. He handed the postmaster this little card and this guy said, wait a few minutes. So about 5 minutes went by and then 2 big guys with these back sacks came and there were 2,500 letters that were sent in from firsthand military witnesses.
That's incredible.
And so what Leonard did is, and this falls into what you were talking about, he had the status reports, and this is the Rosetta Stone for all of the Leonard Stringfield UFO crash retrievals. So this is UFO crash retrievals, the complete investigations, all the status reports in one volume. But the problem is here, as you look through this, there are almost no illustrations, no drawings, no names. So it's up to us to preserve an important part of our national history by using these status report case numbers with all the descriptions to make these cases come alive. And that's what we've done. That's what we've done.
Yeah, when I first read those reports, I lost my mind. I'm like, people don't know about this. This is cutting edge stuff. Like you said, he was really the guy who made this an acceptable area of UFO research. Because in the beginning, in the modern age of UFOs, people wouldn't even accept humanoid reports.
Yeah.
Would not even talk to people who thought they saw humanoids. And crash retrievals, forget it, because of that whole fiasco with Frank Scully and Behind the Flying Saucers.
Right.
I think he was the first to mention really UFO crash retrievals at all.
How many retrievals are there in that book?
Go ahead.
How many retrievals are there amassed in that volume?
Within that book and within the private secretarial dictation notes that are at Lunken Airport, I counted 119 crash retrieval cases.
From what year to what years?
I would say going from he does talk about Cape Girardeau, so 1941 to somewhere around 1983 timeframe. That is the timeframe.
Okay.
And the point I like to make is, so we've got 119 cases. If you went to Vegas and you had a roulette wheel and it had 121 spots on it, at 119 chips, you're going to win every time.
Absolutely.
It's 119 to 1, and the odds are in our favor.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that is just the tip of the iceberg. And this is what he was able to get, one man.
That's right. That's
So,
right.
but before we get into that, I'm curious, have you yourself had any kind of personal experience?
I can't say I've seen it. I cannot say I've been on a crash retrieval team. I wish I was, but no, I have not been on a crash retrieval team.
Never seen a UFO.
I've been to Area 51 on the outskirts. I've seen some things, but I think they're flares. So I honestly can't claim I've seen anything. But I don't need to see it to believe it because of the caliber of the witnesses.
Now, Preston told me that you're a draftsman and that you have drawn many of these craft, the different shapes and everything. How many are there that you've amassed together?
Well, we've done all the mission critical ones in Leonard's book. We've done them.
Awesome.
We've done them. And I can't take credit for all of them. My artists, I've been working with them very closely. I have to give credit to my artists because there's a theoretical limit of where I can take it. When it starts getting biological and you've got smooth contouring and you've got bodies being autopsied, that's a little bit more than I can illustrate. It has to go to a professional artist to do it correctly.
Okay.
So have you touched into the research of Robert Wood? Is that him? He and his the father and son team?
A little bit. Yep. Ryan and Robert. Yeah, they're good
Yeah.
friends. They're good friends. Yep.
Okay. Yeah,
They're
because
good
I know
friends.
they took sort of the reins of the UFO crash retrievals. There's not a whole lot of people really covering that aspect.
No, there isn't. It's a small group. This is a very small group. You know.
Yeah.
I'm interested. All the congressional hearings, have you all been invited to go and present at all or talk about
Well,
anything?
it's funny you mentioned that because June 10th through the 12th, I'm going to be presenting 4 presentations, 2 on the 10th, 2 on the 11th, 1 as a condensed version on the 12th, and this is at Washington, D.C. at the JW Marriott. And then on the 12th, there'll be a condensed version at the National Press Club. This will be along with Dr. Stephen Greer. Everything is on SeriousDisclosure.com. All the references are there, and I want to give credit to Dr. Greer. We will be working together on getting this out. So we're expecting senators, congressmen. It will be streamed live. It'll be available to the public, and we're going to lay it all out. I'm going to hit all the cases that I can within the time frame. I'll be talking about the black budget. I'll also be talking about historical UFO cases as well. And I'm going all the way with it. I'm not holding anything back. Dr. Greer is too. And there will be surprises that no one has seen before. Very accurate detail illustrations, very accurate detailed drawings, conceptual artwork, things that no one has seen before. I can guarantee you that.
We have a question here. Dawn Curtis, she says, are all or most of the recovered crafts the same looking, or are they all very different from one another?
They're different. They're different.
Okay.
But what's interesting is when you start looking at these cases as a body of work, as a complete body of work, you start looking and you start identifying patterns. I'm going to give you an example. We've got at least 4 cases now within these crash retrieval operations where military personnel, white lab coat technicians at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base are desperately trying to breach the hull of these craft with diamond tip drill bits. They also use, jackhammers, acetylene torches, and then lasers. And I'm talking desperate to get inside here. And in each of these cases, they can't get in.
Do they say why? Do they have an idea?
They put the laser on the skin, it bounces off and hits the ceiling panel.
Yeah. Has it occurred to anybody that on the inside of this craft is an operating system that is repelling everything, that the first layer of defense this craft has is actually operating, and it may have crashed, but it's not turned off? Do they know this?
That could be possible. At least in one of the cases, you can see the rectangular windows and you can look inside, and it's devoid of any seats, of any biological applications. There's no rivets, there's no seams, there are no visible means of propulsion.
Right.
These things are anacyclically sterile, like they've been built up on an atomic level.
Yeah. Have you ever heard what Bob Lazar says about all this? Have you ever interviewed him or talked to him about it?
I've met Bob Lazar, yes. I met Bob Lazar, and it's a very interesting account, although personally, my jury is out. So I'm skeptical, open-minded, but skeptical.
Okay.
Yep.
So one of the things we did talk about when we met and exchanged some of our notes and stuff was the many varying shapes of UFOs, because they come in every shape and size. And I'm wondering what do you think about that? I mean, we have cars, of course, of many shapes and models, but some of these, I mean, we were talking about one case, you sent me a drawing of it, where the UFO sent out an arm which reached over in a claw and is clawing into the smokestacks.
That's your case, Preston. That's your case.
And you drew it up, and that's a good example of like just how unique some of these shapes are. So what do you think about the fact that there's such a wide varying of shapes?
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing that we should consider is if these are ours, right? Why would we be having our own teams at the Aeromedical Lab, at the Foreign Technology Division, at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base? Why would we be having our own white lab coat technicians spending 1 minute of their own effort trying to get into these things if they're ours? So by definition, that's telling us that it's leading in the direction that it's not ours. It doesn't seem to be Russian. It doesn't seem to be Chinese. because if it was ours, we'd already know how to get inside. But
You're
we
exactly
can't get
correct.
inside.
These are,
So
yeah. Yeah.
just that alone tells us that there's something going on here.
All right. Well, here's a question from John Lanigan. Hi, John. Thanks for joining the show. He says, hi, Michael. What do you think of the TR-3B? It's a good question. Do you think we have in our possession anti-gravity craft?
Answer to the question is yes. And we know the date, October 1954 is when they made the breakthrough. If you look at all the newspaper clippings about the universities, about the defense contractors, you look at all the Amarillo Daily News, you can track the historical legacy of gravity research. Sperry Rand Corporation was involved. Bell Aircraft Company was involved. They were desperately trying to crack the gravity barrier. It's very clear they've made a breakthrough. And what they've done is they left us all behind. So what you see out here, when you look outside your living room window, it is a construct. It is not the real world. We are at the very minimum, we are 100 years behind where we should be right now, 100 years.
Well, I have a huge question for you.
Yeah.
It's from information that I know. Do you have any crash retrievals from about 1942 up in New York?
Up in New York. The only thing I could remotely get to would be Cape Girardeau 1941. That'd be the only thing. Now, that's not New York, but it's heading in that direction. Beyond that, it would be West Coast back in 1942, Battle Los Angeles. So when you take those two cases, by the end of 1942, we already had at least 3 crash retrievals. This is long before Roswell.
Yeah.
Long before Roswell.
Yeah, the Cape Girardeau is a good one. Yeah, that's one of the, I think one of the early, well, I'm going to say documented, I guess, just from the main witness that he was a chaplain, right, or a father.
Yep, that's right. William Hoffman. Now, Preston, do I have the capability to share my screen or no?
Yes.
I do.
Yes, you do.
I do. Okay, let's see if we can do this here. I'm going to go to present. And I'm going to share screen. Let's go here.
Girl producer, 1 second. Is she on it with you? Good. If it's working, she's already done it.
Okay, let's try this again because I share screen, entire screen, share. Okay, now if I go down here, do you see this?
Yes.
You do see this. Okay. Well, why don't we go ahead and see if we can get something going here. All right. So you're on board with this, Preston? Everybody can see this?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, but do bear in mind, there are some people who are just hearing the words. So if you can describe
You're on
the picture.
Roku.
Okay,
Just
no problem.
Yeah.
So I'm using this slide here, UFO crash retrievals, the ultimate holy grail of UFO research. Now, why do we want to call it the ultimate holy grail? It's simple, because the crash retrievals have the debris, the bodies, and the craft. And it has everything wrapped up into one tight little, nice little package. We don't need any more of these CE1 cases. We don't need any more lights in the sky cases. You can go on NICAP.org and you can read into your heart's content. I'm talking about hundreds of thousands of case files and reports of lights in the sky. We need to take this field and we need to move it forward. We need to take the ball and move it forward, or we're never going to get anywhere. We're going to be here the next 50 years and we're still not going to know what's going on. And so that's why Dr. Greer is pushing the ball forward, taking a leading role and getting these firsthand military witnesses to come forward to tell their story, backed up by documented evidence. And that's how we're going to move this forward. So that's why the crash retrievals are really the holy grail. A couple of quick announcements here. These illustrations are computer-generated forensic composite illustrations based on the original source material. We will protect some of the identities of these witnesses within this presentation. Sources for the material, we talked about this before. I'm going to rip through these really quickly here. 3-star U.S. Air Force generals, U.S. Air Force fighter pilots, astronauts, commercial pilots, air traffic controllers, neurosurgeons, pathologists, theoretical physicists and mathematicians, U.S. Army officers, U.S. Navy officers, military police, high-level Pentagon officials, top military brass, scientists and engineers who worked at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and other government facilities. So that is the caliber of witnesses that we're going to be talking about here.
I think that's a really important point too, because although the crash retrieval field does rely pretty much exclusively on eyewitness anecdotal testimony, people are saying, well, how they might be lying. I'm like, well, listen, these are the people who are running the country. These are people we depend on. These are very intelligent, trained observers, scientists. So yeah, it's an important point.
Yep. That is the key to this. That is the key to it. Quick quotes here. Number one, quote, UFO crash retrievals can't be real because if they were, I would have read about it in the local newspaper. That's from the general public. Now, number two, there are not now, nor ever have been, any extraterrestrial visitors or equipment on Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. This is from the official U.S. Air Force press release, July 1980. So I came back. I said, oh, yeah, we'll see about that because we already talked about the quantity, the number that we have here. Leonard Stringfield, we want to introduce him. We already talked about him very briefly. These are just some of the bullet items here. Born in 1920, just as a historical background. He joined the military as soon as he heard about Pearl Harbor, December 7th, 1941. And then we'd already talked about here, he passed away in 1994. Newspaper clippings, Cincinnati Enquirer, July 19th, 1993. Author continues quest for truth about UFOs. And then it says, quote, what I've collected has staggering implications for mankind. This would be the biggest thing since Christ, really. Yeah, and if you think about it, if we are being visited and these craft are being shot down by our own military to exploit their propulsion systems and energy systems, and that technology is being trickled down into the defense contractors, but not into the general public, it is the biggest thing. It is the biggest story. So we've got to figure out a way to get this out. We really do.
Yeah, I think that's one of the driving forces behind the cover-up because it's so momentous. They just, I think, are so baffled and overcome by it.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking
There's a lot about this that the government has not released to the public, and they've compartmentalized so much that so many of you, and I'm saying you as well, are not aware of. And you've also been fed a few fibs as well. No kidding.
I couldn't have said that better. That's very well put.
Yes.
You've got fear and intimidation as one. Right. Then you've got compartmentalization as two. And then the third thing is, and this is the kind of the most underground concept here. This story is so crazy. It's so unbelievable. It's so outlandish that it actually has its own built-in self-protection mechanism because it's so crazy. No one can believe it.
That's right. Yeah. It leaves room for speculation, dreaming, for the worst kind of gossip there is, repeating things that just morph into things that are unbelievable. It's a whole thing. It really is. You're exactly correct.
And I know you've got a lot to say, Michael, but I have one quick question because people always ask me this. They're like, how do these UFO crash if they're so advanced?
Good question. I'm going to be addressing that at the National Press Club event, also at the JW Marriott here on the 10th, 11th, and 12th. And I'll just briefly say that, and this is a good point. You're telling me that you've got these ET races that are perhaps 100,000, maybe 1 million years in advanced technology as we do. And now they've navigated from 100 million light years away. They've navigated all these black holes and stars and quartz and dark matter and gravity wells. They've gone through all that. They get to our atmosphere and they crash. Does that even remotely sound logical at all? Or are we missing something here?
Well, can I give you a hint?
Yeah,
I would like to put my 2 cents in because this is my opportunity here. Okay. I am very well, you may not believe it. You probably don't know my story at all, but I am a contactee and I am very well versed in all of this. Very well versed. And I can tell you 2 things. Example A, you can't crack that with a laser. You can't crack it with a diamond drill. You're not going to crack it. This is not a craft that can be shot out of the sky, period. This is a craft that flies magnetic field lines on this planet, and in outer space, they use a higher propulsion system that is even better than the one they use here. They're going on batteries down in our atmosphere, and they have to surf the magnetic field lines. And the truth is that while we're going, our poles are changing, which, by the way, have been changing for the last 100 years, and have seriously gotten worse starting around the 40s, that when they're flying here, they hit, drop, or lose cohesion with these field lines and they crash. That's why they crash. I've said it a million times. It's in the book that Preston wrote about me. And I just want you to hear it. I want you to think about what I say. All right. They're not being shot out of the sky. They are losing cohesion with the electromagnetic field lines of this planet.
Yeah, there's a lot of them flying around too. I mean, accidents happen.
And it's very logical. And most of your physicists will go, yeah, that could be it. That's probably true. And it is. So think about it. Put it out there to them that somebody said it.
Good point. Good point.
Okay.
Yep.
I would hate like heck for y'all to go there and one bit of truth not get thrown into the mix. And that is true, what I say.
All right. So then we already talked about the book here. This is the cover here, UFO Crash Retrievals. 1978 to 1994, everything in one bound volume. We already talked about briefly here the odds of the 119 cases, and all we need is one for these to be true. And then the concept of non-reality of crash retrievals completely falls away. So really, it's in our favor. The odds are in our favor. It's up to the government now because we've got at least 119. All we need is one for this to be true. That's all we need. Now, we already talked about the National Press Club event, June 10th through the 12th. I want to give credit to my good friend Rudy Gardea. He's the one who did my sketches. Now, here is our first case. This is 1942. This is at an Army base north of Georgia. Even Leonard didn't know where this was. This is page 319. That's the source, UFO Crash Retrievals by Leonard Stringfield, page 319. Now, this craft was 15 feet wide. It was 10 feet high. There were hieroglyphic markings written along the edge bottom of the craft itself. That was something that was talked about by the main eyewitness here. Now, there were 3 levels to the craft. The upper level had a control panel with buttons, switches, dials, and levers. That was like the upper level. The mid-deck, which you can see here on the upper enlargement on the right-hand corner here, there was a wraparound window, transparent wraparound window. On the opposite side of that, there were 4 bar stools, just simple, fully integrated, what looked like bar stools. And on the bottom, there was a hatchway or some type of an entry hatch. Now, if you look at the dimensions here, 10 feet high, and then these crew members, at least 4 were taken alive. They later died, but they were taken alive. There has to be, according to the dimensions here, a cutout somewhere in the mid-deck for these ETs to stand. There's no other way that this could happen. So by default, there has to be some type of a circular cutout on at least deck 2 of this craft. Now, these crew members were about 90 pounds in weight, large black eyes, milky white skin. And this is something that we've heard of multiple times. So you've got these ETs recovered, oversized head, oversized eyes, slit for a mouth, minute nose, emaciated long arms that go down beyond its knees. This is something we're hearing again and again. Now, this is just one example. This is 1942 crash retrieval. This is long before Roswell here. Now, next one. This is a private who worked in records management. The source for this is page 59 from a book called Space, The Final Frontier. This is the cover of the book here. And if you look at this sketch, this is the original sketch that went with the sighting report. Now, this thing came in from a railroad car, flat car from Arkansas, and this is November 1946. So even now, we're still before Roswell. This craft was 15 feet across in diameter. It was about 7 feet tall. It had a flat section wrapped around the outer circumference of the craft that was about 18 inches wide. It had these rectangular windows, and when you looked inside, they were transparent. There were no rivets, no seams, no Ace Hardware hex head bolts. no visible means of propulsion. There was nothing on the inside of this craft other than a central column that was 3 feet in diameter that started at the base of the craft and ran all the way up toward the upper deck of the craft.
The central column, that's something I do hear from a lot of contactees. And I have to say, this craft, which, for those who can see it, it's a typical saucer with little windows around the edge. That looks just like one of the cases in my drive-in theater book, where it flew right by the Yuma drive-in theater. This is a very common, I've seen that sort of, well, I haven't personally, I would love to, but certainly have heard witnesses describe this sort of exact craft.
Yeah, and then your mention of the central column, that pops up again and again. And see, that's where we can build the case that we've got common denominating factors of cases that are separated by time and space. And we can start to piece the puzzle now. That some of these witnesses didn't know these other ones, but they're talking about the same features. And so that's how we can build the case that this is something that we're talking about reality here. Now, here's the cleaned up drawing here. You can see the central column. You can see the dimensions I put down on here. I've cut away this thing on the upper right-hand corner. You can now see the central column here, and that's important. But what I want to make a real good point of here, and these are the bullet items: no rivets, no welds, no seams, no hatches, no control panels, no seats. And if you look at the front view here on this window, there's a red dot. That is the attempted point of entry that they were using diamond tip drill bits to try to breach the hull of this craft through these windows, and they couldn't do it. So here's the full color rendering here that shows you what this craft looks like, and we've cut away the skin so that you can see this central column here. This was my first attempt to render this craft, and now I'm taking you to Rudy's drawing. You can see here, so this private went up to this records management guy as he was delivering this letter, and he said, "You know what? I got something I want to show you." So he brought him inside the hangar, walked him down to the end of the hangar, and this craft was sitting on the hangar floor. Off to the right, there was a tarp that was folded up. There was a toolbox, and then there was an electric drill with a diamond tip drill bit inside of it. So that's what they were using to try to get inside this craft. Now, so we took all the information together from the original witness. We took the sketch from the original witness, pieced all the information from the text, and we came up with this full color rendering that you see here. And this is our best effort to get a real good example of what this may have looked like if we were actually there. And I want to give credit to Joseph Wraith for doing the illustration on that one. Now, next one. This is Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio, 1946, still before Roswell. Tex Martin. Now, in this case, he was a young boy. He was at the right place at the right time. This is page 242, 243 from the book, UFO Crash Retrievals by Leonard Stringfield. His father was an electrical contractor, and they were working what I believe this complex right here. This is hangar complex number 4, and it's Bay E, which is in the foreground here. I've actually been inside this hangar. It's a large complex, large hangar. I can't guarantee it was this hangar, but a good possibility that it was. Now, there's an adjoining cafeteria to this hangar. And if we move forward here, there was a soda pop vending machine, vintage 1946, something that looked like this. And this little boy is going up to his father because this janitor came up and said, "Hey, do you want a soda?" And he said, "Yeah." So he asked permission from his father if he could have this soda. And his father said, "Sure, of course." So this guy gets this soda for this young boy. And as soon as he hands it to this boy, coincidentally, one of these workers from inside this hangar comes through this adjoining doorway, and this little boy peers inside, and he sees 2 18-wheeler tractor trailer lowboys that have tarped debris with a canvas green tarp, and there was a dish-shaped craft and at least 3 bodies near the dish-shaped craft, kind of halfway covered up in blankets. He saw this with his own eyes here. Here's the first rendering that we put together just to lay out the components of this. And then this is the final drawing here. This thing was 20 feet in diameter. It had 2 bands wrapped around the outer circumference of the craft. You can see the little boy in the background looking through this doorway here. and you've got this tarp debris on the 18-wheeler tractor trailers. On the lower left, on these gurneys here, you can see these beings, and these were about 3.5 to 4 feet tall, emaciated bodies, oversized head, oversized eyes, slit for a mouth, minute nose, something that keeps on popping up again and again. Now, this is our full color rendering. If we wanted to take you there, this is our best effort of what this may have looked like if we were actually at the scene here at Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio, because this was not Wright-Patterson Air Force Base yet. It did not become Wright-Patterson Air Force Base until October 1947. So it was still Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio.
Yeah, I do remember there was a number of cases in Leonard Stringfield's book where people just accidentally walked through the wrong door. I think there was one in a museum, father and daughter. So that's fascinating to me, because these are people who are not looking for this, not expecting this,
Right?
don't know how to interpret it. And
Correct.
UFO wasn't even really talked about much way back then.
Yep.
I'm curious, your crash retrievals, did they ever get a craft that was in pieces? Because you said something about.
Yeah, there were craft that did have debris, but as far as it breaking the tensile strength of the craft itself, they may have been using liquid nitrogen. I have heard of reports of them getting inside, and the only way they could do it was with liquid nitrogen, super chilling it down, changing the atomic level of how the atoms are stacked together. That might be one way that they get inside these craft.
Well, didn't they, the Aztec UFO crash, which apparently had a pinhole in the window, and they opened it up? I think I remember they said they were dismantled it.
Well, yeah, in that case, there was a quarter-size hole in one of the 16-inch diameter porthole windows, and one of the oil field workers went back to his truck, pulled out a pole that looked like a cue thing at a pool table, and he stuck this wooden dowel rod through this hole, and they activated a pins mechanism, and they found out how to detach the pie segments of this craft. And that's how they got inside. So that they opened up a hatchway on the bottom that showed the other 14 bodies. And then they figured out that this whole thing is attached together by a unique pin device. That's how they were able to ship it to Los Alamos.
Yeah, that's the Frank Scully case that was
That's
widely
correct.
attacked. Do you think that case is legit?
Well, if you look at the research by Scott and Suzanne Ramsey, even Stanton Friedman said that Scott and Suzanne Ramsey have put in more time, effort, research, blood, and tears on the Aztec UFO crash retrieval than anyone has ever done on Roswell. That's coming from Stanton Friedman. So yeah, they've pinned it down. They contacted the last of the surviving oil field workers. They interviewed these, and they talked about the entire retrieval operation.
Yeah, it's an amazing book. Yeah, I think it's a pretty well verified case, because a lot of these cases rest on a single witness. Roswell, certainly not.
And not Aztec either, because there were multiple oil field workers that got there before the military. Back to our case here. So this is Papagos Indian Reservation, west of Globe, Arizona, not too far from the Superstition Mountains. Now, the source on this was a witness who served in the U.S. Navy during World War II. That's the source. So it's page 93, case A10. I've got the map here that shows you the general location. So Globe is off to the left, and the pin section is the approximate location of where this thing came down. So we move to the drawing here. This thing was 30 feet in diameter, 18 feet high. It had 2 rings wrapped around the outer circumference of the crest, somewhat similar to the last one that we just considered. These 2 military personnel are on a unimproved dirt road going through the desert terrain here. They end up being challenged by 2 MPs, and they're like, I don't think you're supposed to be here. Get out of here immediately. Well, while all this is going on, they're looking another 200 feet off to the left, and this thing is augured in at about a 45-degree angle. It had an upper dome on top. So this is another one of these cases where it was seen by military personnel right in the middle of a retrieval operation. And again, it had these 2 rings wrapped around the outer circumference. So we took all this information together from the witness report, from all of the information within the book, and we came up with this full color rendering here. May have been what this thing actually looked like if we were there. So Again, another case here. We're just barely tapping into now the time frame of Roswell. We've already considered at least 3-4 cases even before Roswell. Next one, July 4th, 1947. So this is 2 days after Roswell, because Roswell was on the night of July 2nd, 1947. This is July 4th, 1947. The source is a sergeant, U.S. Army Air Force. This is page 196 within Leonard's book. This is giving you a rough idea of where this thing came down. Now, this was at night. This thing came down intact. It was about 100 to 150 feet in diameter. And I want to stress at least 2 points. There were men with Geiger counters going around this craft checking for radiation. That's the first thing. Second thing is, this entire operation was excruciatingly well lit. Repeat, excruciatingly well lit. And they had still camera photographers going around taking photographs of this thing. Not only that, they had motion picture film reel going on with this thing. So you've got these all lights lighting up the entire scene. You've got floodlights shining on this craft, and we've got still photography, motion picture film reel. They've got the evidence. Where is it? Where is it being kept, and why is it being kept from the public, the American taxpayer, and the world in general? That's the question. They cannot argue that they don't have the evidence. We could make an argument that senators and congressmen don't have a need to know or don't have a high enough security clearance. We can make that argument, but the bottom line is it is being stored in a vault. Here's our full color rendering of what this retrieval operation may have looked like. This is 1947 White Sands Missile Range. Okay, now we've got 1947. This was a metallurgical engineer. He's no longer alive, but his name was Albert Bruce Collins. And this was seen at Berkeley University, 1947. He was kind of a white lab coat technician. He was at the right place at the right time when this 18-wheeler tractor trailer, it backed up into this warehouse. So the scene here is this large warehouse, and he may have had a clipboard on. He was a white lab coat technician. As this 18-wheeler starts backing in, what did it look like? This is what it looked like. It was an egg-shaped craft, 30 feet across, 15 feet high. Now, I want to mention that it had a hull breach or crack on this egg, showing you the interior components. Now, the interior components consisted of a 3-foot diameter sphere, which made up the central core of this craft itself. On the forward section of this craft that was still visible within this hull breach, there was a composite panel. Now, wrapped around the outer circumference of the interior core, which is the 3-foot diameter sphere, there was another composite panel that mimicked the outer circumference of this interior core type device. Now, on the upper right bottom corner of this craft, there was a hull breach indicating that there may have been an implosion from the inside. It was not a hit. This was an implosion from the inside because the shrapnel was going outside. So we believe there was a superstructure in interior implosion somewhere on the inside of this craft. Now, my question is, was this the main craft, or was this the propulsion system for a much larger craft? That's my question. Now I want to
Dolly, I would love you to comment on that, because seeing this sphere, Dolly is a fully conscious contactee. She's had hundreds of experiences. She's learned how to pilot the craft. And this is an egg-shaped one, which is unusual. Most of them are saucer-shaped.
It's an electromagnetic sphere, and the consciousness of the being that is piloting that is in that sphere. That is a drone. This drone goes out from the main craft. He's in the sphere, his consciousness, and he's piloting it that way. It's totally psychic. The energy that's propulsing this craft is in that sphere as well. It is the only way I can describe it is a type of graviton wave that they use. And if there was an explosion out of it, I'm wondering why. He may have, I get a couple of explanations for that, but I'm not going to tell you. I don't want to tell you. Let's put it that way. I would have CIA on my door in 5 minutes. This is a big deal. That is absolutely a drone. And the entity that is piloting the main craft has remoted into that electromagnetic sphere, and he's piloting it. And they call it lookabout. They go out and they look where they're going, look what they're looking for. Once that blowout happened, he remoted back to the main craft, and that is a totally dead egg, and nothing works on it anymore. The two panels on the inside, I will tell you this, take the instructions from him psychically to give him an instrument view of everything around him, 360 all the way around. So yeah, that is a drone.
And all the people I've talked to, piloted craft. Grant Cameron wrote a book about this. They're flown psychically, and this is why I think we don't see a lot of the, gears and engines and stuff, because we don't even understand. We're not even close to understanding this.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're on this call, Dolly. I'm glad you're on this call.
Yeah, I got something to show you in a little while. I'm just waiting for my chance to do that.
Okay.
You've got my full interest, 100%.
Well, before we move on, we are at the halfway mark. So, Dolly, do you want to do the station break for us?
This is the Light Gate with Preston Dennett and Dolly Safran, and we want to welcome you. We are broadcasting live from the United Preston, help me. The United Radio Network, and out of New Orleans, it's 105.3 FM and 107.7, and the United Paranormal Radio Network. We are on Roku, Rumble tonight, and YouTube, and Facebook, and a few other platforms. And thank you for joining us.
Okay. Yeah, and we're joined by Michael Schratt, who is just mesmerizing us with his amazing knowledge of these UFO crash retrievals. Yeah. Very cool.
I'm totally disoriented. I can't believe you got that. That's a Tic Tac. You're looking at a Tic Tac right there.
We'll have something to say about the Tic Tac in June for sure.
Okay.
Cool. Are we allowed to move on here?
Oh yes, please do.
Okay. So here's our full color rendering of what we believe this thing may have looked like if we were there back in 1947. So. Yeah. Just kind of give you an idea here. Now I want to move on to the next case here. This is a carrot patch south of Salinas, California, August 1947.
I know this one.
Yep. Yeah. This was seen by two 19-year-old workers in a nearby field. Now, the foreman knew about this the night before, but he told the two 19-year-old workers the morning of. So that's when they discovered this is August 1947. Here is a sketch within the original Stringfield reports of what this thing looked like. 9 feet in diameter, 4 feet tall. It had a double row of indented, quote unquote, windows that were about 8 inches wide, wrapped around the outer circumference of the craft itself in 1947. Here is the map. X marks the spot. So if you look at the highway here, you can see the 101. You can see Soledad and then Gonzales. So that's the location of where this thing came down. We were attempting to go here to see if there's any debris left, but we're at the 75-year, 76-year time frame here. I don't know what would be left, if anything, but the possibility does exist that there could still be something there. So here was the first attempt to accurately draw this craft, August 1947. It kind of had a flat top on the upper section of the craft itself. This was the first color rendering that I put together just to give an idea of what it looked like. And then here's Rudy's refined drawing of this entire operation. Now, these boys came up to this craft. They did touch the craft. By this time, within 15 minutes, the U.S. Army got involved. They told these two young boys to get out of here immediately. They walked about an 1/8 mile down where this field was, but not too far away that they didn't see the retrieval operation. They got to see it with their own eyes, the entire operation. They put this craft onto the trailer of the 6x troop transport and moved it out of here. They saw the entire operation. So we took all this information, the original sketch, X marks the spot, all the 2-page report that went with this case, put that all together using Rudy's drawing as a guide and came up with this full color rendering of what this may have looked like. So I just want to give everyone an idea that, now we're 6, we're 7, we're 8 into these cases now. We're building up a library of different configurations. Now, this is a really good one. I like this one. This is sometime prior to 1951, Sierra Madre, Mexico Valley. This has to do with a construction engineer who was, again, at the right place at the right time when this thing came down. This is page 332 from UFO Crash Retrievals. And this involves an American C-119 flying boxcar. And he was employed by the U.S. Army to help and assist pushing this craft into the clamshell doors of a C-119 flying boxcar. So what I want to do now is I want to take you inside the cargo bay of this thing. Now, here's how we gauge the maximum diameter of the disc-shaped craft. The cargo bay is 9 feet 10 inches wide. That means that whatever this craft was, it could be no longer than 9 feet 6 inches, allowing 2 inches on either side for clearance. So that's how we know how big this thing was. It was a smaller craft. So I want to take you to the drawing. This is the drawing. We've got the clamshell doors opened up. We're loading the craft inside now. And now I want to take you forward and hit you with the full color rendering. And this is what we believe the rendering to be looking like. You can see the clamshell doors opened up. Now, if you look closely, he did say that there were bodies recovered, approximately 3 bodies recovered. They were very small, but he also said that their skin was burned a very dark brown, black color. And when he tried to touch it, I don't want to get too gruesome here, but when he tried to touch it, the skin on the beings adhered to his fingers. And that's what it looked like. That is the scene. So I want to do a blow up here showing you the loading process. And that's what the entire operation looked like. So this is sometime prior to 1951, probably 1948 timeframe.
So I have a quick question because I know you have so many to share. We'll probably not get through all of them, but these are many very small craft. Generally speaking, I'm wondering what, in terms of your knowledge, is the largest crash retrieval in terms of the actual size of the craft.
The one that we looked at before, the one that came down in White Sands, 1947 timeframe, that was 100 to 150 feet in diameter, so much larger than this one.
And have you heard that report from Leonard? Well, I'm sure you have. But
that's from Leonard Stringfield's case. Yep.
One in California where the guy was a photographer, and they took him to the site. He's like, photograph the outside. It was a 20-foot craft. He said, okay, photograph the inside. And he said the inside was much bigger.
Yeah, well, that
up across it.
Yeah.
That's in this presentation too. Oh yeah, that's in here too.
All right, I'm jumping ahead. Sorry.
That's an AI operated drone, by the way. There's no need for AI, biological AI, and their drones. They drop them from the big ships to watch everything here.
Okay. This is Naval Air Station, Sunnyvale, California, 1950. Hangar 1.
That's the one, yeah.
Yep, you probably know about this. This source is a radar operator. This is case B5, page 57, UFO crash retrievals by Leonard Stringfield. Now, this hangar still exists today. It is historic. I have personally been in this hangar, and it's so large that it has its own weather. That's how big this thing is. So the account mentions that this radar operator, somehow he went through a connecting doorway. He went through this door. There was an MP standing guard, and he saw a very large 80 to 100 foot diameter disc-shaped craft with a row of windows wrapped around the outer circumference of the craft. He was challenged by this guard and ordered out of there immediately and told to forget what he saw. It's a good case. It's a good case. His mother knew about it. The guy ended up crashing in an aircraft crash, but he told her the entire case. And I got to tell you, it sounds legit. It sounds legit.
Yeah, I mean, some of these people have lost their life for going public, as I understand.
They have. Now, she didn't think that there was a connection between the plane crash and what he saw. You never know, but in this case, she thought, no, it was just an accident. But you never know. You never know. But it's the body of evidence. It's the case after military personnel coming forward, these pilots coming forward, the astronauts coming forward. The credible sources is what makes this body of work important, because they can't just be explained away. They can't be brushed under the carpet and forgotten about, because it's our military pilots that are reporting these things. Now, next one. This is a military officer, former military officer. He was at an unknown U.S. Air Force base. This is page 212, page 213. He was at a classified materials library, and this guy, what he ended up doing is he pulled open one of these file drawers, and he was looking through these files because he had the right clearance. He was there. One of these folders had what looked like the term UFO crash retrieval on it. I doubt it was that simple, but the bottom line is when he opened up this folder, and I'm going to take you inside this folder now, it had multiple photographs of UFO crash retrieval operations. This was there was documentation indicating that bodies were recovered as well, and they were using diamond tip drill bits on the scene to try to get into this craft, just like the one at Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio, in 1946 that we already talked about. Now, this one was Farmington, New Mexico, sometime prior to 1950. This was 36 feet in diameter. This is the gentleman who described the photos here. Now, there's a couple of key points that I want to make. I'm going to run through these relatively quickly here. So, number one, military officer had the correct security clearance, which gave him access to a classified materials library. Number two, report seen by witness made reference to crashes and that bodies were recovered. Number three, in addition, diamond tip drill bits and acetylene torches were used to gain access to the interior. Reference 1946 craft seen at Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio. And then the 40-foot craft, we haven't talked about that. That was December 1963. Now, number four is important. Eventually, technicians were able to gain access to the interior of the craft by way of a small entry hatch. The report said, referring to the door, that it was almost as if the material of the craft liquefied and then solidified again. That's something that we hear again and again and again, that you cannot even see the demarcation marks. You can't put a razor blade in these doorway hatches. They are so fully integrated into the exterior of the craft itself, you can't tell there's a doorway there. That's what this thing looked like, according to this witness here. Now, we should mention, since we're talking about Farmington.
I'm so glad you brought this up.
Yeah, and I know you know about this, Preston. I know you know about it. Is the Farmington Armada. We cannot talk about crash retrievals without throwing this in, because this is such a serious case. This is Albuquerque Journal referencing the sources here. March 18th, 1950. Hundreds at Farmington report large force of flying saucers. When you look at this, and David Marler has done a great job on this, there were, I'm talking about 500 dish-shaped craft that were flying in formation. There was a red leader. They were going backwards. They were making 90-degree left-hand turns at high speed. They were reversing, just exotic maneuvers that these things were making. That has to be included in this whole mix here. Now,
I just want to make a quick reference to that, because there's speculation as to what was going on there, because there aren't really a whole lot of cases involving that number of craft. That's a full-on display. This is a type of behavior we don't often see, but there was some speculation. I forget what researcher said it, but that it was a sort of a memorial to the craft that crashed there.
That could very well be.
ETs. I don't know that that's true or not, but there's nothing quite like that in the UFO literature anywhere. Right. There just isn't. So I really wonder about that.
Now, one thing I want to point out here, during the early 1950s, 51, 52 timeframe, there was an official standing order by the U.S. Air Force told to our own pilots to shoot these things down at any cost. Shoot these things down. So this is Cincinnati Enquirer, July 29th, 1952. Shoot saucers down. Jet pilots so ordered in 24-hour air alert. Next one, jets keep 24-hour alert for saucers. Pilots ordered to down objects if they don't land. On the saucer trail, pilots told shoot them down. Jets on 24-hour alert to shoot down saucers. So why am I getting into all this? These are the jets, F-94 Starfire, that they were using to try to intercept and knock these things out of the sky. If you go to Davis-Monthan, they have an air museum there. And if you go to Dayton, Ohio, they have an air museum there. The upper one is from the Boneyard, where you can walk around their museum outside here. And you can see on the front nose of this thing, there's 4 hatches. These hatches retract and they open up. And on the bottom at the Air Force Museum, you can see all of the rocket tubes that launch out to try to take these things down. This is the aircraft that they were using to try to shoot these dish-shaped craft down. So here's the rendering of what this might have looked like when they were doing an attempted intercept. Now, I want to bring this up because this is critical. This is in Leonard's book here. And this is from a woman who wrote to Leonard Stringfield. Her name is Mildred Bissell. The date on this is October 2nd, 1979. It's very important. Quote, I heard you speak at the MUFON Symposium in Dayton last year, and I'm interested in your research on retrievals of the third kind. I gave a talk at a local library last week, and in the discussion period following, a fellow told me that when he was a gunner in the Air Force, he had emptied his guns on a UFO and had taken pictures with his gun camera that clearly showed the shells exploding against the side of the craft. He said the camera was taken off the wing of his plane when it landed, and the pictures developed. At 2 a.m., a couple of military policemen came and got him out of bed and took him to the base auditorium. They ran the 17 seconds of movie of the UFO over and over and questioned him and 2 other crew members until 10 a.m. He was warned never to tell anyone what had happened. He said he had a wife and family, a good job, and a lot to lose. He seemed afraid of the CIA and wouldn't even give me his name. So here's an example of one of these pilots who unloaded an entire, barrage of shells on this thing. It hit the craft, and they got it on motion picture film reel gun camera footage. Now, show
us that footage. That's the footage I would love to see.
Yeah.
Frank Frascino wrote a book, Shoot Them Down.
Yep, that's right. That's right. That this happened World War II. This happened in Korea. This happened in Vietnam. And we can bet that it also happened probably during Desert Storm. So we've got 4 conflicts where they've got gun camera footage of these things being hit and tracked and also being recorded. The question is, where is the footage? Is it at an underground Pentagon vault? Is it at Andrews Air Force Base? Is it at Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio? Where is the photo vault? MacDill Air Force Base, Langley Air Force Base, could be a number of depositories around the country.
Yeah. By the way, Michael, Dolly was inside a UFO when a lone, just a farmer, I guess, shot.
And a big 12 gauge shotgun. It was a double barrel, and he shot at us, and it terrified me because I knew it was going to happen. It ricocheted and hit him in the thigh, and they had to load him up and fix him. And
so many cases of people shooting UFOs.
The power propulsion systems, or as you would conceive of it, it's not what you think. It has 2 layers. One is right around the craft. It protects inertia and that kind of thing. And then the one outside it. And that is what actually, moves it. They skiff. They do all kinds of things with that. And if you aim at one, there's nothing that will allow anything to penetrate their craft. And when you said thousands or hundreds of millions of years, we're talking billions of years ahead. And there's no way you're going to gun one down. No way. I know that Greer talks about scalar things. If you can interrupt the gravitational fields around them, that might shock a pilot for 2 seconds, but they'll take off and they can go, 9, 10,000, 14,000 miles an hour, as you would understand it, instantly away from it and no problem. If they've ever brought one down, it would surprise me.
Well, there was some speculation that the Roswell craft was brought down because our radar interfered with their navigation system. You think that's true, Dolly?
No, because it's psychic and the pilot is not driving it that way. They don't fly conventionally at all. Everything is, that pilot is keyed in with the pilot. Every craft is run by another being. There are 2 pilots. The craft itself is alive, as you would understand it, and then the pilot in the seat. And they're joined up psychically together, and they work in conjunction. There's instantaneous reflexive action going on between the 2. And they see 360 degrees all the way around them. There's nothing you can do that they don't already know, at least 1 second ahead of your jerky motion, that they're going to react to it. And it's amazing to me that people don't realize that. You've got films, people have films all over the place where they're doing right hooks, left hooks, up, down, all around. They go from 0 to 7,000 miles an hour on takeoff alone. And by the time they hit 7,000, they can punch it to 9,000 or 14,000 miles an hour. in this atmosphere. Outside our atmosphere, they go much, much faster than that. It's ridiculous to me that anybody with half a brain has not figured out that the government is paranoid to let anybody know this, because it means they're not in control of the situation. And that's a bad thing to tell anybody. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What they don't tell you is that they're not the ones being aggressive. We are.
Yeah.
We
So
keep them alert.
I will agree with that. I will totally agree with that. Yes.
Yeah. So, but yeah, you can't hit one down. You cannot bring one down. You just cannot. I will go so far as to tell you this: with our magnetosphere, as bad it is, it's almost 40% down now. We are taking CMAs. You know this. I'm sure you're quite well aware of it. They're not flying here right now. They've taken off. The only thing that's here now is like the drones that you saw. They'll drop drones, send them in and leave them around, and they'll come back out and just keep an eye on the situation, because our whole solar system is going through something and they're watching it happen. And they will not be flying the bigger craft here at all. Not while this is going on, not until our poles flip. So deal with that. Okay,
all
seriously.
Right. Back to you, Michael.
This is the Pentagon. This was an off-limits room. The source was a Pentagon office worker. This is page 152, case 1. So in this case, this office worker, somehow it appears that she got into a basement vault area, and she was going through a doorway. She somehow got into this double doorway section that was off limits, and she mentioned that personally. And inside there was this dark, dingy, dirty, dusty room. It had some boxes off to the side. It was very poorly lit. And she kind of did a 180-degree turn. And when she turned, she saw this. She saw a quote-unquote pickled alien in a large glass jar. Ooh. Within 5 seconds of her seeing that, she felt a very firm hand on her arm. It was an MP telling her to get out of there immediately. She had to sign papers not to talk about this, but years later, a source from Leonard Stringfield was able to get her story, and this is our full color rendering of what this may have looked like. And so this is at the Pentagon, and we believe that there is an underground vault at the Pentagon where they store probably gun camera footage, 8x10 black and white glossies, motion picture film reels, and full color 8x10 glossies as well, under the Pentagon here. Fort Polk, Louisiana. This is summer 1953. Source was a private in the Army. Case A1, page 80. And I'm going to give you a map. This is the location of where the full color, this is our first rendering of what this thing looked like. Now, another egg-shaped craft. It had a fin that was wrapped around the outer portion of the craft. Now, this thing was still turning when they got there. And wow. The soil was red and hot when the retrieval team got there. They saw the whole thing come down. It was 30 feet across. Now, there were 3 ET beings recovered. 1 was carried on a stretcher. The other 3 were helped out and assisted by military personnel. Now, they were all about 3.5 feet tall, very emaciated bodies, oversized head, oversized eyes, slit for a mouth, minute nose, one-piece tight-fitting flight suits. They had what looked like gloves on. They also had full head helmets on. And in the report, it said that it didn't even look like they had a knee joint. They were moving very staggered, like they had no knee joint. That was one thing that I thought was interesting, bending only at the hip. So you can imagine how these beings were walking. So I want to take you to the full color rendering here. Here's the rendering of what Joseph Wraith put together. You can see the red scorching terrain here, the landscape, the craft itself. I'll do a little bit of a blow up. This is what they may have looked like with the full head helmet on. You can see the one-piece tight-fitting flight suit, also the gloves. We've captured that. Here's the one being carried off into the ambulance truck. And in the report, it says that the other beings were yelling at the one on the stretcher, like they were trying to, hope that his comrade was still okay. They were checking on their comrade. That's what it appeared to be in this report. And so this is Fort Polk, Louisiana. Here's the rendering blow up of what this may have looked like if we were actually there.
Well, if the general public had any idea this was going on.
I know. I mean, These guys are good. These guys are good. They have successfully kept this under wraps for over 80 years. They've done a very good job. A very good job. This is one of my favorite cases. This is Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in 1953. The source was an Army Reserve warrant officer, and I have his name. This is one of these cases where I know who it is. We have his name. This is Retrievals, page 15, abstract number 8 by Leonard Stringfield. Now, picture the scene here. Wright-Patterson Air Force Base at night when a 4-engine transport plane came in, and this is hangar complex number 4, Bay E. I think it still could have been this last one where I've got the arrow indicated here. And this is a front view photograph that I took when I got access to the base. It's a pretty large hangar. And this DC-7 cargo plane looking almost identical to this scene right here. So just picture this plane taxiing up onto the tarmac. Now these large hangar bay doors open up. This 4-engine DC-7 cargo plane taxis in. They immediately shut these hangar doors shut. And what happens next is, and this is from the testimony of this warrant officer, there is an aft left cargo bay door opens, and they're offloading these wooden crates with a forklift. And this is what he saw. You can see the upper portion over here with the cargo bay open. Now, he was standing not too far away from 5 wooden crates. The 3 upper crates had their lids pulled off, showing you what appeared to be 3.5-foot tall ET beings. They were wearing a one-piece tight-fitting flight suit, oversized head, oversized eyes, slit for a mouth. One of them was female, he said. He knew that. And he said that all of them were supported by this white netting that allowed them to be suspended above the dry ice, protecting them from the freezer burn below. That's what he said that he saw. And he also saw that there were boxes associated with this retrieval operation. He was told that that was from the crash retrieval. And these bodies may have come from something in the Southwest time frame. So we took all of his testimony within the report, and we came up with a full color rendering of what this may have looked like if we were actually there at the exact same time frame that this warrant officer was there. And you can see the dry ice mist coming up from the below where they're being protected from this white netting that was supporting them.
No, why is this? Did this one capture your attention? What makes this one of your favorite?
Because this guy was 12 feet away from these boxes, and he gave a very good description. He talked about the bodies. He talked about the retrieval of the craft being shipped to Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio, and we've got the name of this guy. So that's why this is important.
There must be an enormous number of people sitting on this information who aren't talking.
Yep. Here's the view looking down inside now.
Oh, wow.
One was female because he said that one of them had breasts. So this is a case where this appears to be a female ET. Let's move on here. Dutton, Montana, 1953. This is Cecil Tennant. He was a civilian. This is page 16. Now, this guy's driving down the road, and he looks up, and he sees this 300-foot-long cigar-shaped craft tipped up at a 45-degree angle. And I'm going to move on to the next slide here so you can see what this thing looked like. It was belching out smoke and flames. Now, he's in the pickup truck going one direction. The oncoming traffic going in the other direction had their tailpipes on fire. So whatever this thing was doing, it ignited the surrounding atmosphere so much so that it was igniting the tailpipes of the oncoming traffic. Now,
Dolly, can you comment on that? Like, why would that happen?
Well, he's in the skiff position. In other words, he's looking for a field line to stay on it. He's trying to stay aloft. That's what they do. They tip up because they're going up magnetically connecting to a line underneath them in the ground. And if he's belching something, that means they had a containment issue and it blew. They all have a circulating, like you said, the red stuff, that's like the lifeblood of the craft. And if something blew out, and nobody's perfect. Everybody has problems. Nobody in the universe is capable of building an unbreakable machine. There's no such thing. So they probably lost containment. They were losing, what helps that thing operate. And I guarantee you it was coming down. They're trying really hard not to, but it was going to.
Wow. All right. Sorry, Michael. I had to ask.
Oh, that's fine. So this thing was 300 feet across. Now, while all this is going on, this guy pulls into a gas station. He files a report. Coincidentally, a police officer files a report at the same time. And somehow that got back to the local Air Force base. So that night, he gets a call from this general that you can see in the upper right-hand corner that Rudy's done just such a great job now. The first words out of this general to this eyewitness on the phone are, quote, "I want to see you." So the next morning, he was told to show up at the base, and he was grilled for hours, and he was forced to sign non-disclosure papers, not talking about it. Now, as he was leaving this Air Force facility, the local air base here, he saw two military personnel with these sacks over their shoulders. And one of these guys tripped, and this sack fell off his back. And this eyewitness said that the bulges within this sack resembled human body parts. I don't know if they were ET body parts from a crash retrieval or human body parts. He didn't know, but he said they look like body parts. It's a little bit of a stretch, but that's what he said. And so this was at Great Falls Air Force Base, later Malmstrom Air Force Base, that had a number of ET UFO related incidents that shut down 10 missiles at Malmstrom Air Force Base. I want to mention that as well.
Yeah, I talked to a first-hand witness, by the way. So
First-hand, Robert Sala, right?
No, this guy did not go public until recently.
Okay.
Yeah, Mel Hansen was his name, actually.
Okay, interesting.
So you're saying that I was like, my brain was exploding over this one. They found that craft on the ground?
I can't say that. He didn't say that. It's not mentioned in the report. All it said is that when this gentleman was being escorted out, I'll go back one slide here, he saw two MPs with big potato sacks over their shoulder, and one guy tripped and he lost this thing out of his hand, and the bulges that this thing left looked like body parts. So maybe they did retrieve it. It may or may not have been connected to the earlier sighting, the earlier date. I don't know. It's not mentioned, but it could have been.
Okay.
All right. So I want to point this out. Sao Paulo, Argentina, December 7th, 1954, had almost the identical situation here. Now, there were discs coming out of the bottom of this craft by an iris, and it too was belching out smoke at a 45-degree angle. So it's not a completely isolated incident. There is more to this than just the one case that we talked about. So there appears to be a pattern recognition here in Argentina. This is 1954.
I wonder if those are little lifeboats escaping. Like, let's get out of here. This is going down.
Something. So this was our kind of a little bit of a color rendering of what this may have looked like.
Yeah.
Now, this is the one that you were talking about a little bit earlier, Preston. So this is Walker Air Force Base, New Mexico. No, this isn't the one you were referring to. April 12th, 1954. This particular person served in the Air Force from 1954 to 1955, and this is page 82. So in this case, the primary eyewitness was playing ping pong, and all of a sudden he was pulled aside. He said, "Get yourself ready immediately." And Walker Air Force Base, before it was Walker Air Force Base, it was Roswell Army Air Force Base 509th Bomb Group at Roswell. So we're talking about the same thing. It was later renamed Walker Air Force Base. So he gets in a Sikorsky H-19 helicopter, identical to what you see here, virtually the identical helicopter. And he was kind of a photographer. So they took off. They headed about 30 miles north of Roswell. Then they made a left-hand turn. Now they're heading toward Corona, northwest, almost the identical location of where the craft came down July 2nd, 1947, years earlier. This was at night. And when they got to where they needed to go, this is what they saw. Now, keep in mind, this is at night. The helicopter was hovering over the scene. It was shining a spotlight down onto the craft. This guy pulled open this cargo bay door on the right side, and he had a handheld camera. He was taking photographs of this entire scene while the helicopter is hovering above. It was a 40 to 50 foot diameter disc-shaped craft that came in and augured at about a 40-degree angle. And he said that when they landed, they got out of the helicopter, and the entire vicinity of where this craft came down reeked like automobile battery acid. That's what he said it smelled like. There were 4 bodies recovered total, and 2 of them were found inside. So they had a total of 4 bodies recovered. So we took all the information together from this case and the witness testimony and came up with this full color rendering of what this may have looked like if we were there. So this
Beautiful.
battery acid thing, that keeps on coming up again and again. That's something we've heard multiple times.
Yeah. Have you ever like mapped these out on a map to see if there's any correlations as to where these are occurring?
I haven't, but it's a very good thing. I should do that, but I can tell you for sure that the majority of these cases, they're in the Western United States, Arizona, New Mexico, California. They seem to consolidate in the Western states.
Yeah, I wrote books on each of those states, and New Mexico by far had the most.
By far, yep, that's right. That's right. The other Roswell UFO crash on the Texas-Mexican border. Got to give credit to Noe and Ruben for doing the research on this. This is 1955 across the Texas-Mexican border south of Del Rio. So I want to take you to the map here. Now, the sighting here, here's the map. You can see Del Rio, and you can see the Rio Grande River. There were 3 B-47s heading westbound, going across Texas. They were being escorted by 4 F-86 Sabre jets, and all of a sudden, this dish-shaped craft comes screaming by their flight path. And the F-86 pilot, he saw all this. So he called the tower, which would have been Carswell Air Force Base. And he said, can I break away and follow this thing and do a low pass? And so they gave him clearance to do that. And he broke formation. He followed this thing down. He saw the entire crash took place. He did a low pass, and that's what you can see over here. He did a low pass, and this is just south of the Rio Grande. So what he ends up doing, this thing was 25 feet in diameter, 5 feet tall. He lands at Carswell Air Force Base. He gets out of the jet. He drives to Corsica, which is a civilian airport. He jumps in a tail dragger 2-seat Aranca and flies back to the crash site. Now it's starting to get a little bit darker now, but he still got there during daylight. And when he landed, he was with a friend. He got out of the Aranca and was walking up to the craft. You can see that it left a debris field. This thing is 50 feet in diameter. He said that the upper dome popped off the craft. The Mexican military got there before the Americans did. And by this time, it was getting colder. And this particular Air Force pilot said that the Mexican soldiers, what they were doing is they were taking blankets from their own trucks and they were setting the blankets on the debris, which was still warm to the touch. And once the blankets were warmed up, they wrapped the blankets around their bodies to heat them from the cold air at night, which I thought was an interesting thing. You wouldn't just make that up. So what I want to do now is I want to take you to what this gentleman saw as we go to the hull breach of the craft. He got a look inside the craft, and he said that there were 4 bodies recovered. They were all deceased, and they had quote-unquote arms that looked like broomsticks. This is from Air Force pilot Robert Willingham. He is the primary source of this. So now what I want to do is I want to take you to the full-color rendering, and here's the full-color rendering of the crash retrieval scene. You've got the Mexican soldiers that got there before the American military. The dome is popped off. We've got the Aranca in the right foreground. And now I'm going to zoom you in to the whole breach of the craft, showing you the bodies here. It's a sad scene, but these beings were definitely deceased. They did not make it through, and they had arms that were long that looked like broomsticks, according to the Air Force pilot of the F-86.
Now, is this the case that they were driving along and all the soldiers died?
Well, that's a different case, but
okay.
They did not serve. But the one you're talking about, we're going to talk about that one as well.
Right.
I
Sorry,
have a
Dolly.
question.
Go ahead.
A burning question.
Yep.
You realize that these craft are highly, highly, highly radioactive. And to throw a blanket over a craft that's radioactive like that and warm up on it's insane to me. What happened to these guys? Is there any
good question. I don't know. I don't think
I guarantee you they were not healthy after that. Not at all. noon.
Probably. I
Yeah.
don't know, because the American pilot never stuck around after dark. He flew back out, and then the military got involved. The American military got involved. I do not know what happened to the Mexican soldiers. You could be right. They could have died of radiation. Who knows? But that was not written in his report or his testimony.
Well, we have about 20 minutes left, just so you know.
Okay. We'll keep moving on here. Now, this is a very interesting case. This is Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in 1955. This is a woman known as Mrs. G. She worked in the Foreign Materials Division at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and we got that from Charles Wilhelm. This is page 17. So she was this office worker. Now you can imagine this large warehouse, or the closing scene, the Indiana Jones Raiders of the Lost Ark. You've got all these racks and you've got these boxes and crates. That's the scene that we're talking about here. Now, if you look at warehouse building 258, this is kind of what area that she was working in. Now, what she said in this report is that she said that she was in charge of cataloging 1,000 components that came from a UFO crash retrieval. Not 10, not 100, 1,000 pieces. Okay. So her job was to catalog these components. So what they had this assembly line all set up. This is from Mrs. G. She was there. She said that they had one station where there was a guy that was taking photographs of the debris to record this for historical posterity. That thing was moved on to a next station where they bagged it and tagged it. And then they moved it to her section where they cataloged it. And then they put it on these racks in all these cabinets where they had 1,000 components of these retrieval operations. So I told Rudy, I said, give me this warehouse. I want you to show me one gentleman taking a photograph of this debris. Then I want to show you this tagging operation. Then I want to have her involved in the cataloging operation. Then on the right-hand side, left-hand side, I want you to show me cabinet upon shelving where they're stacking all this debris. And here's what we came up with. Now, while all this is going on, she said that there was a mobile dolly that was rolling by, and she said that there were 2 3.5 to 4 foot tall ET beings that were being preserved in kind of this formaldehyde preservation fluid. Now, what I want to mention is I want to give you her exact quote. This is what she said, quote, "Uncle Sam can't do anything to me once I'm in my grave." 6 months later, she died. We just got to her in time, and this is her story. I take my hat off to this woman who is an American pioneer and American hero.
No. Is this June Crane, or is that?
No, this is not June Crane.
All right.
This is Mrs. G.
Because she had a very similar story.
She had a very similar story. You're right. She did. That's exactly correct.
All
So
right.
again, not only do they have the motion picture film reel, but they've got the 8x10 glossy black and white. And according to Mrs. G, they've got over 1,000 hard evidence, physical evidence of UFO crash retrieval. And it was at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base during this time frame.
I so want to see that first.
So do I. So do I. So do I. 1,000 components. 1,000 components. Okay. Retired Air Force pilot, late 1950s. This was an interview conducted by Ed Camarack Jr. Now, this Air Force pilot stated that he saw about a 5 to 6 minute film clip. And what this film clip depicted was about a 60-foot diameter dish-shaped craft. It had a 10-foot wide gash on the side of it. So it could have been a hull breach. It could have been an implosion from the interior. And kind of the video cut to the interior showing control panels, buttons, switchers, dials, and levers. There appeared to be star charts. And then he said that there were 3 bodies recovered, 5 foot tall, that had kind of blankets covering them. This is from the retired Air Force pilot sometime in the late 1950s when he saw this film clip. Here's the blow up of what this scene looked like on top with the propulsion system and also the interior display of the craft itself. Next one, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. This is April 1962. This was 5 transient pilots that were looking for a mobile racquetball court. They were going down the hangar doors at Wright Field, Dayton. This is one that you were kind of talking about where they got there by accident. That's exactly what happened here. They were transient pilots from the 354th Tactical Air Command Fighter Wing, page 88, case A6. So you can see they're jogging, they're in their shorts, they're looking for this mobile racquetball court. They don't know where it is, but they know it's within the row of these hangars. They go up to this one hangar, the hangar doors open, and they see this 15-foot diameter dish-shaped craft. It's supported by 2 engine test stands. It has military personnel with rifles guarding it, and then kind of a rope that's wrapped around the outer circumference of this craft. Now, one of these MPs went up to the leader of the transient pilots and said, "You're not supposed to be in here." He was challenged, and we have his quote here. I'm going to move forward here. It says, "The guard challenged by saying, quote, 'I don't think we're supposed to be here, sir.' I replied to the affirmative, and we turned about face and departed, mumbling to ourselves that the good old U.S. had developed or had all along flying saucers in service." So here is a credible report from at least 5 Air Force pilots that they saw this thing. And they believe it could have been one of ours, that they had already developed this technology.
Yep.
I know Leonard Stringfield's the guy on this, but he's not the only one. Ray Fowler, he had a real good case. I remember there was a case from Jim and Cora Lorenzen. They talked to a pilot who said he had seen one of the little flight suits from these ETs. And there's, a lot of major researchers have 1 or 2 cases like these. I just want to make a point that it's not all coming from one guy.
True, that is true.
Even though he is the guy.
I threw this in here because this was a reference. There wasn't a drawing, so I had to come up with something. Reference number 53, date 1963. This is a captain in the Navy. He later flew for Braniff Airlines. I've got his original report. I do know his name. We're going to call him PJ here. He encountered a 30-foot diameter dish-shaped craft at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. He saw it by accident, just like these guys. So this is 1963. Next one. This will burn up some real estate, but it's important that we consider this. This is December 1963, Cherry Point, North Carolina. This was a U.S. Marine. His initials are RB. I know who it is. I know who interviewed him, and I interviewed the gentleman who interviewed this Marine. I interviewed for him on tape for about 2 hours. So I've got some good reference material on this one. UFO crash retrievals, page 152, case A2. So this Marine, he's at Cherry Point, North Carolina, at this base right here that we see in this picture. Here's the map that shows you where this is, just north of Havelock, Cherry Point, North Carolina. So he boards a plane with blacked out windows. They fly to an undisclosed location. They land. This is about 3 to 3.5 hours from Cherry Point, North Carolina by plane. When the doors open up, he sees this craft. It's a fat hamburger, highly polished chrome, hamburger-shaped UFO, 40 feet in diameter, 15 feet tall. It has one of these hatchways that are fully integrated into the side of the craft. You could not put a razor blade into the seams, fully integrated. It had no visible means of propulsion, no rivets, no Ace Hardware hex head bolts, no Zeus fasteners, no visible means of propulsion. This thing had 9 elliptically opaque shaped windows wrapped around the outer circumference of the craft. Now, here's the point here that I want to make out, is that these red dots on this drawing are the attempted entryway points of a diamond tip drill bit, acetylene torch, and then a laser. So they tried 3 ways to get in this craft. Now, here's the full color rendering by Joseph Ray. Did a great job showing you what this thing looked like. I also would mention that he said that there was a 1-inch lip between the exterior of the skin itself and the exterior of these opaque shaped windows, something that you could feel with your thumb. There was definitely some type of a lip there. And I want to give credit to Joseph Wraith for the full color rendering. These, as a review, are the 3 ways they try to get in this craft. Number 1, diamond tip drill bit. Number 2, acetylene torch. Number 3, a laser beam. So these are the 3 ways they try to get in. Now, I want to mention this. This is the original sketch by the U.S. Marine who saw this thing with his own eyes. This is not a reproduction. This is not a copy. This is the original sketch. Now, he said the whole thing was propped up by scaffolding, and they had a catwalk where you could walk around this thing, kind of like at eye level and look inside these opaque windows. On the upper and left-hand corner of this drawing by this Marine, you can see these lighting kind of sections. He said that the interior of this facility was excruciatingly well lit. There were no shadows, so you could see this thing very well. Now, if you look directly under this thing where it's being supported, there are these like a little bit higher black pads. These are the pads that were holding this craft on the scaffolding, which was connected to the catwalk. So this gives you a layout of what this looked like. Now here is Michael Johnstone's little bit refined drawing. He's the gentleman who interviewed the Marine. That's his drawing. If you look on the far left of this craft, you can see that lip that he was talking about. That's the 1-inch lip from the exterior of the craft to the exterior of these opaque colored windows. So here is the little bit refined drawing that I put together. You can see I've done a detailed view of this lip here, and I'll just do a couple of the bullet items here. Craft was seen at an undisclosed military location 3 hours by plane from Cherry Point, North Carolina. Entire craft was surrounded with what looked like standard military aircraft scaffolding. I also want to mention that there was a white circle painted directly up below this thing on the floor that kind of wrapped around the outer circumference too. And his job was to guard and shoot to kill anybody who tried to breach that white circle that was painted on the floor directly below the craft. Here's the full color rendering by Joseph Wraith. He did a really good job. This is pretty much very close to what this thing looked like if you were there. Jose Sanchez commissioned a joint. This shows you the diamond tip drill bit disintegrating as they're trying to get into the craft itself. First pass full color illustration by John McNeil, showing you the whited painted circle below. And then I want to talk about after they gave up on the diamond tip drill bits and after they gave up on the acetylene torches, 2 18-wheeler tractor trailer lowboy trucks pulled up to this hangar. They had 2 very large electrical generating devices, and there were heavy gauge cable that came from these trailers that was brought inside the hangar, and they were taking a laser and trying to shine the laser on the skin of the craft. And when they did that, they moved it away. It was warm to the touch. It had no effect whatsoever beyond that. No effect.
The illustrations are great. I think it really shows how beautiful these craft are, which is something so many witnesses remark on, just the sheer beauty of it.
Yep. And that's the goal here, Preston, is we want to make these cases come alive. We want to maintain an important part of our national history through the use of illustrations. We don't want to just rely on this text after page after bland text. We've got to at least try to illustrate these cases. Okay, let's move along here. What I want to do now in our remaining few minutes here is I want to take you through an entire walkthrough of this entire facility as though you were able to sneak inside. So let's go on the outside of the facility. We're kind of at the chain link fence here. Now we've breached the security fence here, and we're like the invisible man now. We're walking inside the hangar bay. We can see the beginning of the operation. Now I'm taking you inside. We've got the scaffolding here. We've got the catwalk. You've got military personnel. He said that there were white lab coat technicians, teams of these white lab coat technicians that had color-coded badges. And we'll talk about the badges. If you look closely, you can see this white painted circle here. Let's give you kind of this is an eye view at about 5'6". This is the bird's view from an eye level here. Again, you can see the scaffolding, military personnel. Now you can see this fully integrated section of the entryway hatch. You can even make out the 1-inch lip from the exterior of this chrome polished exterior craft and the opaque windows.
I'm obsessed with that chrome finish. Every time I see anything chrome, I'm like, oh my God.
That's what these things look like. Here's 3/4 ISO view looking down at the scene. We've got a couple of spooks over here. We've got the white painted circle. Now, I would mention that he was there and his job was to frisk anyone who came into this facility. But there was a time, Preston, there was one time where he was left alone in the facility because no one frisked him, and he took a photograph of this thing. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later here. Okay, so now we're a little bit down from 45-degree look down. We're about 30-degree look down angle. We can still see the catwalk. We can still see the white painted circle. He said that on the last day he was there, they lifted it off the scaffolding. They were putting it on a tractor trailer with kind of a cradle. They were lowering it down, and now they were building a suspension frame around the disc-shaped craft, and they were covering the whole craft with a tarp. So let's go to the tarp operation here. You can see them building the tarp. We've got it almost completely tarped now. Now we're getting ready to move out. We got everybody loaded up. The thing's out of there. Personnel is gone. We're moving out. We're getting ready to move out of the hangar now. Now we're fully out of the hangar. And this is Rudy's drawing of what it looked like on the exterior portion outside of the hangar. Now, back to the laser incident. When they shone this laser on the exterior of the craft, it bounced off and damaged the ceiling panel inside this facility. And you can see here, here's the incident with the laser. This took place according to the U.S. Marine. Here's his drawing of what this laser incident looked like. And that's why I want to bring up this movie, which I'm sure you've seen, Preston.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure you've seen this movie. This is the 1980 B science fiction movie, Hangar 18. I don't recommend it because it has not held up over time here. It's pretty weak. But my question is this movie a Hollywood belated designer leak for something that actually took place? And the only reason why I bring this up, because what this Marine talked about, virtually identical operations were seen in this movie. Number one, in this movie, you see that there are white lab coat technicians. Now here they're yellow, but in the movie, there's a portion where they have white lab coat technicians. This Marine said that during the time he was guarding there were white lab coat technicians with color-coded badges. So that checks out. Number two, there is scaffolding in this movie, in this hangar facility. The Marine talked about scaffolding and a catwalk. Number three, in this movie, there is a very brief incident with a laser. The Marine said that there was an incident with a laser. So these things check out in the movie and in real life. They all check out. Here are the color-coded badges. So if you had a green badge, you could go to this location, but you couldn't go here. If you had a yellow-coated badge, you could work in this part of the hangar, but you couldn't work on that part of the hangar. If you had a red badge, you had access to the entire facility. So bottom line is these lab coat technicians had color-coded badges. Next one. Now, when he was in the facility alone, because no one frisked him, there was one day where he was in there alone. He said he had a Minox camera that he snuck into his pant leg here. He pulled out this Minox camera and he snapped a photograph of this thing.
Good job.
He said, quote, "Someday I will tell this story, and by God, people are going to believe me." However, in 1983, that photograph was lost in a flood. So we were this close of getting this evidence, this photograph that this gentleman took. So we took all the information together from the Marine, from the testimony, from the sketches, from the drawings, from the about 12 pages of notes that I've got on this, put all that together. We put together a replica of what this photograph from this Marine may have looked like. And this is our replica here. A little bit grayed out, gray tone, sort of brown, but it may have looked somewhat like this. This is what these Minox camera photographs look like. Something similar to this right here. Paul Nitz was the United States Secretary of the Navy during 1963 to 1967. This is like immediately after Kennedy was assassinated. He said that there was an instance when a United States Navy secretary just about put his foot past that white circle on the floor. He almost shot this guy. I did the checking. Wow. It checks out. It would have been this guy right here. He almost got killed from trying to breach that circle that was painted on the floor.
We're going to have to wrap this up. Like we got like 2 minutes.
Okay, we'll wrap it up. So plenty more to go here. Bottom line, Preston, is that case after case after case after eyewitness testimony from these military witnesses, Air Force pilots, people who are on the retrieval teams, leave really no question now that there is a covert, there is a secret retrieval operation going on since at least 1941, probably earlier, where they're retrieving the bodies, the craft. Those quote unquote assets are being exploited. The technology for the propulsion systems, the advanced energy systems are being trickled down to their private defense contractors, and they're leaving us all in the dust. And it's high time that these technologies be put together and released by a united coalition of scientists for the benefit of all mankind.
Totally agree. Well, if you could stop sharing the screen for a second, that would be awesome.
Good.
And,
we'll go back here. Good. Let's see.
Thank you so much. I mean, that was
sure.
Yeah, that was great. I want to give you a chance to, plug your website or your book or what have you, your amazing book, Dark Files. I recommend people check that out. You're speaking at Contact in the Desert.
I have a YouTube channel where I put basically all of this on here. The YouTube channel is called Blue Room Media, 3 words. And again, I just want to mention the event in DC, June 10th, 11th, 12th, all the information, SeriousDisclosure.com.
All right. Well, I think we can take another few minutes, according to the producer. So, Dolly, if you wanted to show him a picture, right?
Right. Well, let me ask you a question before I show it to you. Did you ever check out any other types of incidences where they got vehicles on film ever? That the Turkey incident, for example?
There definitely are other incidences on film.
Have you ever seen footage from any of those in the type of craft?
That's what we're looking for, right? Because astronaut Gordon Cooper had 2 sightings, at the very least 2 UFO incidents. One in West Germany, 1951, where he saw a disc-shaped craft that was seen by his wingman in an F-86. The other one was at Edwards Air Force Base in 1957, went on a dry lake bed. A disc-shaped craft came down, extended the landing gear legs, sat down on the dry lake bed for 60 seconds, popped up, retracted the gear, and took off at about a 45-degree angle, and they got it all on motion picture film reel. So the answer to the question, yes.
Okay. All right. You're talking about B.D. Cooper, right? My dad knew
Gordon Cooper, astronaut Gordon Cooper.
Okay. All right.
Mm-hmm.
My dad knew him.
Okay.
And so I know a lot about that stuff.
Good.
I have a picture of a craft. And if
Okay.
you ever saw the Turkey footage and what that craft looks like, I want you to see this. Michelle, pull it. This is from 3,000 feet. I was on the ground. He was 3,000 feet above my head. There is an actual sighting of him in Las Vegas. When I landed in Las Vegas to drive to Laughlin, he was up there when I landed, and then he followed us out. And when I got to Laughlin, he came down 3,000 feet to let me photograph him. Go, Michelle.
I think she's trying to pull it up, and it's doing the dreaded spinny.
Shoot.
Well, we still have a few more minutes. So
Yeah, I will show you privately. How's that? And
That's
I
fine.
can show you a lot of my footage. It is the same craft.
there we go.
This is before he turned on all his lights. This is side view. The 2 lights in the front are the actual front of the craft. And you can see the hump and the tail coming down. He is not circular. He is boomerang shaped. He can come off as looking circular, but he is not. Okay, Michelle, do the other one.
Oh, did we lose Michael?
No.
I think we may have.
Uh-oh. What happened?
I don't know.
Probably scared the hell out of him.
No. I do know that he may have run out of time, or maybe his computer. Oh, I'm getting a call.
Okay.
Probably him.
Okay. Hold on. Okay, Michelle. Well, this has been the Light Gate, and we've been coming to you from our radio company from New Orleans. It's the United Paranormal Radio Network, and it's 107.7 FM and 105.3 FM. And this has been a really cool show. There he is. Yay. Okay.
Yeah, that was Michael. He got kicked out. So we're just going to close up the show.
Okay.
So yeah, he was an amazing guest, wasn't he?
Yes, absolutely. I bet you everybody's going to be talking for weeks about this. I hope so.
Yeah, what a
It's
treat.
really
Gosh,
good.
I wish the world knew about this. It'd be so
Absolutely.
different. And I think
The
he's doing
truth
really
needs to come out.
important work.
Absolutely. The work he does is phenomenal. I mean, this is perfect what they're all up to. They're circumventing secrecy here and bringing the truth to everybody the best way they know how, and I'm glad they are.
All right. So you did the station call letters
Yes,
and
yes, I hope I did.
all
I gotta
right.
have it. So we're good. Okay.
Well, perfect. Well, everyone, I guess that's it for tonight. I really want to thank you for watching. It was a real special treat to hear Michael's presentation. If you do have a chance to visit Contact in the Desert, he will be there. His book, Dark Files, is available on Amazon. It's very well received, all kinds of wonderful reviews, and you can see his amazing drawings, which were so cool to see. I mean, that really does bring it to life. And I've always said that, you know, when it comes to UFOs, that phrase, a picture is worth 1,000 words, really, truly applies.
Absolutely.
It really does. All right. Any last words, Dolly?
No. This has been fun.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for watching.